Hey there. Today, we're going to unravel a really fascinating story about how our brains learn, how sometimes we learn the wrong thing, and how a good story might just be the secret weapon for getting it right. This is going to be fun. Okay, I want you to think all the way back to biology class. Picture the inside of a cell. It's not this neat, orderly place, right? It's more like a super crowded city with millions of molecules zipping around. So, in all that chaos, how does one molecule, say an enzyme, find its one and only correct partner? Well, for most of us, the answer we got was this brilliant little analogy, the lock and key idea. The enzyme is a lock, the other molecule is the key, and they just click. Perfect fit. It's simple, it's clean, it makes total sense. Here's the catch, though. What if it's not actually right? And that gets us right to the heart of the problem. That simple analogy, as helpful as it is to get started, can actually become a huge roadblock to understanding what's really happening down there at the molecular level.
And look, this isn't some new revelation. Researchers have pointed this out for a while. These powerful, simple ideas can actually backfire. They can cement misconceptions in our minds if we're not super careful about explaining where the analogy breaks down. See, the lock and key idea is incredibly sticky. It's so powerful and intuitive that it hangs around in students' brains even after they've gone on to take advanced, university-level science courses that teach a much more accurate model. The old idea just refuses to leave.
So, if the traditional way of teaching this stuff isn't cutting it, what's the solution? Well, this is where our story gets really interesting, thanks to some clever researchers and a really cool experiment.
A team over at ETH Zurich in Switzerland decided to tackle this stubborn idea head-on. Their hypothesis was that maybe how you teach something is just as important as what you're teaching. And their big idea was to set up a little showdown, a classic textbook explanation versus a story.
So they came up with two different ways to explain the science. In one corner, you have the expository text. You know exactly what this is. It's your typical, fact-based, straight-to-the-point textbook chapter. And in the other corner, you have the narrative text, which took the exact same scientific principles but wrapped them up in a historical story. Okay, so they had their two texts. It was time to put this theory into practice. Let's take a look at how they actually ran this experiment.
They got 130 undergraduate science students to participate. And these aren't first-timers, you know? These are students already deep in their science education at a top university.
The setup was beautifully simple. First, they randomly split the students into two groups. One group read the textbook version, the other got the story. Afterwards, everyone answered one critical multiple-choice question. And the genius of it was, their answer would show which idea they were using in their head, the correct, modern explanation, or that old, stubborn lock and key idea.
And this, my friends, is where it gets good, because an experiment is all about the results, right? And what these researchers found was, well, it was not what you'd expect.
So what do you think? Place your bets now. Who got it right? The students who read the straightforward, no-nonsense textbook, or the ones who read the story?
All right, let's look at the data. On the left, we've got the percentage of students choosing the correct explanation. On the right, the percentage choosing the old lock and key misconception. And honestly, these results are pretty wild. So let's zoom in on that left graph first, the one showing the correct answers. The green line is the story group. Their understanding is pretty consistent, no matter how much science they already knew. But check out the blue line. That's the textbook group. The more biology they already knew, the less likely they were to pick the right answer. How weird is that? But the real bombshell is over here on the right. This shows who picked the wrong answer. For the students who read the normal textbook, that blue line again, the more advanced their education, the more they clung to the wrong lock and key idea. It's like their extra knowledge was actually making the misconception stronger.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The standard, by-the-book teaching method didn't just fail to fix the problem. For the students who should have known better, it actually made them more likely to stick with the wrong answer. So what on earth is going on here? Why would a story work so much better than a straightforward explanation? Let's unpack the incredible power of narrative. Okay, so let's boil it all down. What did we learn today? First, simple analogies, while useful, can dig in their heels and become really stubborn misconceptions. Second, just throwing more facts at the problem doesn't always work. In fact, it can sometimes make things worse. And third, and most importantly, it looks like stories are a uniquely powerful tool for helping us let go of those old ideas and embrace a new, more accurate way of thinking.
And hey,
Don't just take my word for it. The researchers themselves concluded that when a wrong idea is really dug in deep, it's harder to get rid of, and that stories, narratives, seem to be an amazing way to help guide our brains through that difficult process. And that leaves us with one last big question for you to think about. This lock and key thing is just one example, right? So what other simple, neat, easy-to-remember ideas did you pick up in school that might, right now, be standing in the way of you seeing things a little more clearly? Makes you wonder, doesn't it?